Why did we lose the going out aspect of Christianity? Very simply because we decided that we loved our comfort more. As Western society grew in wealth, it became able to supply its own material needs, and comfort and easy living became its ultimate goal. We started dreaming of a future where a better life meant an easier life. A life where our domestic chores and personal grooming would be carried out by robots, where technology would make work unnecessary, and where travel would be possible with zero effort. This cultural striving for the easy life spread into the church, and instead of preaching about the need to pick up your cross, walk the difficult, narrow path, evangelize, confront evil, deal with persecution and scorn in the public arena, etc., pastors started preaching about a God who is simply there to help people towards the fulfillment of the cultural dream. A God who existed to make us healthier, wealthier, happier, and who would fast-track us to the life of ease we craved. Because these pastors told us what we wanted to hear, we gave them our support and made megastars and millionaires out of them. The more we achieved the comfort, the less we thought we needed that genie-style God. If God existed only to provide us with luxury, once we had those things, what else did we need him for? He could go back in his bottle now. We became complacent and spiritually apathetic. Comfort always breeds apathy. That apathy led to passive inertia, and inertia led to lukewarm faith, weakness, timidity, and in the end, boredom and restlessness. We lost true discipleship because true discipleship, with all its nerve-jangling practical application, necessarily involves risk, danger, and costly self-sacrifice, things we decided that we could do without. Most modern churches have been affected by this mindset, and therefore they will provide very little impetus towards going out. You'll be given plenty of opportunities to attend classes, Bible studies, services, conferences, sermons, in fact anything insular, anything that lends itself towards comfortable passive attendance. But you will rarely, if ever, be driven out of your comfort zone. You will rarely, if ever, be personally apprenticed in those things. It's very easy for a modern Christian to come and watch a show on a Sunday, stay anonymous in the crowd for the duration, and then disappear for the rest of the week without putting into practice anything that they've learned. I know because I've done it. Christian leaders no longer send out or demand anything from you, because if there's one thing that the modern leader hates to make anyone feel, it's uncomfortable. Indeed, most of what you see in church today is specifically designed for comfort. Comfortable chairs, comfortable sanctuary, comfortable air temperature, often a comfortable message too. When churches no longer try to grow by venturing out into a dangerous and hostile world with an uncompromising message, the only alternative is to try to grow by putting on the most entertaining show to draw a crowd, and then making the surroundings as comfortable as possible so the crowd will have no reason to leave. A comfort trap is the aim. It's an appeal to our ultimate desire. The success of the comfort trap is then defined by how many bums there are on seats on a Sunday morning. In order to make the experience as sticky as possible, money is poured into increasing the entertainment values. New plush sanctuaries, jumbotron screens, multimedia packages, lighting rigs, sound systems, soft furnishings, cafes with vanilla mocha frappe latte cappuccinos, and anything else that will enhance the show. In a go culture, this is money that would save lives, feed hungry mouths, clothe naked backs, and provide warm shelters for the homeless. But because we don't want to go to them and are stuck in our inward-facing culture, we would rather create ostentatious palaces full of creature comforts than directly help the lost and most broken in society wherever they are. And again, from a pastor's perspective, keeping people comfortable so that they'll never want to leave often means compromised ear-tickling sermons, prosperity doctrine, and the avoidance of controversial issues. Exhortations that thundered from the lips of godly men in history now come delivered as watered-down, pandering suggestions from the pulpit today, if at all. Indeed, you'll often hear this made clear from the platform. We don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable here today. Why not? The Christian message isn't comfortable. It never has been. We get this wrong from the start. Have you ever been to an evangelistic service where the pastor preaches milk and then closes by asking everyone to bow their heads and close their eyes? Then he says, While every head is bowed and every eye is closed, if you want to give your life to the Lord, just raise your hand wherever you are. We don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. No one is going to see you. As people slip up their hands, teams of ushers sneak silently about the sanctuary like ninjas to put a welcome pack into their hands. What kind of message does that send? First of all, it tells them that faith is something slightly embarrassing, but secondly, it tells them that faith can be personal, insular, hidden, private, and comfortable, when it cannot. Jesus has a much more uncomfortable message for anyone who wants to enter his kingdom. He says, "Everyone who acknowledges me publicly here on earth, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But everyone who denies me here on earth, I will also deny before my Father in heaven." In other words, if someone isn't ready to stand up and acknowledge Christ when people are looking, then they're not ready to be a Christian at all. And if we can't stand up and be counted even amongst the converted, what chance do we have of doing it amongst the unconverted when it really matters? Jesus was, in general, far less interested in making people feel comfortable than the average modern pastor. When he sent out his 12 disciples, he told them, "If you refuse to pick up your cross and follow me, you are not worthy of being mine." He continued, "If you cling to your life, you will lose it, but if you give up your life for me, you will find it." Jesus was sending them out and telling them, following my commands isn't optional. If you aren't willing to pick up your cross and go, you're not worthy of me. And if you're not obedient, you have no right to call me Lord. At no point does Jesus pretend that a true walk of faith is comfortable. In fact, he's quite explicit about it being very uncomfortable. He goes so far as to say, "Look, you might actually be required to die for me. People are going to hate you that much. It isn't going to be easy, but that's the narrow road you must walk." This is Jesus' message throughout the Gospels, and we see the reality of it throughout the entire New Testament. Christians being mocked, hated, persecuted, beaten, and even stoned and put to death. Yet this is what true discipleship looks like. It's walking that narrow road. It's learning to apply what you've heard in spite of the opposition from a hostile world. We must get back to that, and in doing so, renounce comfort as our ultimate goal. Instead, we must learn to embrace risk as the theme of our lives. We must once again be willing to go out to a hostile world proclaiming an uncompromising message. We must once again regard our reputations and even our lives as naught compared to the mission which Jesus has set before us. As we bring light into dark places, we must embrace the demands, the dangers, the confrontations, and the risk that it necessarily entails. Yes, it will be scary. Yes, there will be persecution. But yes, it will also be life-changing. It may even be world-changing. This is what New Testament Christianity looks like. There is simply no other way. Former megachurch pastor Francis Chan admitted that all you really need to draw a crowd is a charismatic speaker, an attractive building, a decent sound system, some good marketing, childcare facilities, and a cozy environment. If you put on the best show in town, you'll get the numbers. But that isn't church. It's nothing like what we read about in the New Testament, and it doesn't produce real disciples. It produces sanctuaries full of false converts who are there for an entertaining show, but who balk at the idea of risk, danger, obedience, and persecution for Christ, because that's not what they signed up for. They signed up for a cozy Christian country club. They didn't sign up for embarrassment and scorn. The come culture produces weak, passive attendees rather than active, highly trained disciples. Sure, many of these churches look successful on the surface because they have that big crowd and they make a lot of money, but often they're spiritually hollow shells. They're like the churches of Sardis and Laodicea in Revelation. When Jesus writes to the church in Sardis, he says that they have a reputation amongst men for being alive, but they are in fact dead. To the church in Laodicea, he writes that they have a lot of wealth and comfort, but it's made them apathetic, lukewarm, and worthy to be spat out of his mouth. Both of these churches are successful to human eyes, but Jesus' opinion is very different. In other words, full sanctuaries, full collection plates, and full programs are not necessarily the signs of spiritual health. For proof of that fact, you only have to consider that the largest church in America is Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. I've often fantasized about a church congregation arriving one Sunday morning expecting the usual service routine, only to be told that this week the doors would be closed and they would be sent out in teams to evangelize and work in the local community instead. I've often wondered though, how many people would actually stick around in such an event, and how many people would silently sneak away to an early lunch, and how many people would never return to a church that actually expects them to move out of their comfort zones. It remains just a fantasy for me because I've never actually witnessed it. I honestly don't know how many pastors would be willing to make such demands of their congregations, perhaps from fear of losing members, perhaps even from fear of losing the income that those members provide, such as the professional nature of the church these days with its salaries and building maintenance costs. But in the meantime, it's just too easy for us to remain insular, hidden behind four walls, going through the motions, acquiring head knowledge, bickering about the minutiae of it, but never actually doing anything with it. It might be easy, but it's not true faith. It's not what Jesus requires of us. We must apply.